It's warm out there, isn't it?
It's roasting. Although, I've not been able to see any of this sun because I'm now working, and I've got people calling me going, "Oh, Kieran, how's it going? I've not spoken in a while. I'm just sat in the garden, sunbathing, drinking cider." And I'm like, gee, thanks, guys.
It's annoying, isn't it? I suppose you haven't got any windows in your place either, have you?
Well, we have in the Neils, but they're covered by massive, great big fire curtains. Look, I've been painting black, and I've actually still got some on me.
That happens when you paint.
Yeah.
I've been very tempted to get a couple of paint pots out here, but I thought, do I want to? And then it's like, no, it's
Not
too
really.
nice. The weather's too nice. Sunday.
Yeah, cheers, mate.
This is the Sheer Isolation podcast. It's presented by Kieran Moore and Jon Ponting. Welcome, one and all, to the Sheer Isolation podcast. Thank you for joining us. I think we should, Kieran, I've never asked you this. Why are we called Sheer Music? Why are you called Sheer Music?
Oh, that's an interesting question. So, long time ago, 2004, I was reading a book called Dune. And in the book, there was this line about a guy was climbing a cliff face. And this is going to get so embarrassing. In the book, this scene he's describing him climbing this sheer face. And as he gets to the top of this sheer face, this woman has one of those really bad sci-fi orgasms. I was reading this book, and at the time, I read the word sheer. At this roughly the same time, my wife had a pair of tights or something that was sheer tights. Like, I think they're like see-through or something. And I liked the word sheer because it meant vast, overarching, sort of, wide. And I was trying to be inclusive and wide. I thought sheer, that's it's really snappy, simple word. And then I told someone at a gig we're going to call ourselves Sheer, and we got some really good feedback from this old geezer in the pub. He was like, "That's a really strong name. I really like that." So I said, "Right, that's it. It's stuck."
So the idea behind setting up this Sheer Isolation podcast, twofold really. One thing was to keep us entertained while we're in isolation, but also to do our bit to promote the local music scene, because it's something both myself and Kieran have been doing for a good 15 years or so. So it's collectively 3 decades worth of experience in promoting local music. That's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. When you say 3 decades, it makes it sound like we're really old, but actually, it's just we've both been doing it, and it's just added together.
It's 15 each, yeah. Mind you, if we include our guest, so our guest this week is Ed Dyer from the Tuppenny in Swindon. He's been promoting bands for longer, I don't know.
I think he's been doing it roughly the same sort of length of time I have. I think he came to it slightly later than I did, but yeah, same.
So this podcast. This little 30-minute podcast has 40 years worth of local music promotion experience. That's impressive, isn't it?
That's very impressive, today's one. And we're not old. That's today's theme I'm taking home. Yeah, so I spoke to you a couple of days ago, didn't I, about the local scene and things that were going on. And I've got a wonderful announcement to make. That I've been added to the committee at the Village Pump venue in Trowbridge. And so I will now be coordinating a lot of their bookings, etc. And as we'll hear from Ed in a minute, he's talking about his local scene and some of his local bands. And what we'll hope to do is link up with Ed in Swindon, and perhaps there's a guy in Bath that we'll come to later that we'll also be linking up with. We'll start seeing actual local bands playing in these other towns. So it's really exciting. There's a hell of a lot going on at the Village Pump. And as things progress, I will keep you updated via the Sheer Isolation podcast, and it is genuinely exciting, and I can't wait to share it all with you bit by bit. Right, what are we doing first?
Let's have a track, shall we? Because you picked the track this week, Ollie Kieran Sharp.
Okay, so let me introduce this. It's a band called the Longcoats, and they're from Bath, and it's fronted by a chap called Ollie Kieran Sharp. It's a song called Drag, and it's very good. And I think today, because of Ed's song that Ed's going to pick later, we have an extremely good indie playlist today, so take it away.
Left mine at home. I got my own. You're giving me a heart attack, put away by the phone. We've been talking for hours now. Do you wanna go home? But it's all gonna be alright. So I'm gonna jump up, jump down, I'm gonna lose it now. Bouncing off the walls and I'm all around. You said, I know just what you said. Something's gotta give it all. I know it's everybody should stop for something. But I guess that I am better than nothing. But I'm better than nothing. Done with your vicious ways, don't need it no more. I'm through with your vicious games, leave them at the door. You're making me feel high, what it's like to be on. We've been walking for hours now. Are you gonna go home? Whoa, 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 but it's all gonna be alright. I'll take you tonight. So I'm gonna jump up, jump down, I'm gonna lose it now. Bouncing off the walls and I'm all around. You said, I know just what you said. Something's gotta give it all. I know everybody should stop for something. But I guess that I am better than nothing. Better than nothing. Gonna jump up, jump down. Up, jump down. You said, I know just what you said. You said, I know just what you said. So I'm gonna jump up, jump down, I'm gonna lose it now. Bouncing off the walls and I'm all around. You said, no, just what you said. Something's gotta give it all. I know it's everybody should strive for something. But I guess that I am better than nothing. Better than nothing.
So that was a song called Drag by the Longcoats. This week, Kieran, there was a little bit of news coming out from the government around Corona and getting us back operating as a country. And they've set up a few task forces. Now, they've set up a task force for culture, which is looking to get how we can come out of lockdown and get arts and sports and theatre and that kind of thing going again. There's a separate task force which is looking at how we can open bars and restaurants again. I've got a horrible feeling that music venues are going to fall into a gap in between those two task forces, but I don't know if you've had a chance to look into this or what you thought.
I haven't, but I was reading comments earlier on social media about these task force and exactly what you've just said there. Like, venues have basically been ignored, and they've said that they're not going to extend this whole furlough scheme. You know, they're going to phase it out. No, they're not going to phase it out. They're just going to stop it entirely. And it's like, actually, this is specifically the hospitality industry is going to need some help. So I haven't read into it yet. I will definitely be looking at it tomorrow. Sort of the conversations I have with my manager on every other day. So it would be interesting to know how they're going to manage it. But I'm glad they've made a task force. That's a really good step. But don't forget us, guys.
I suppose there is a logic that if you can get the nation's biggest venues open, then the smallest venues should be a doddle.
Yeah, well,
But who knows?
the first thing I read when I woke up this morning was an article about an American venue that had done an isolated gig. And the picture from it was like this auditorium, roughly, I don't know, let's just say the Forum in Bath. And it had 50 people in. And it was like, that's great. You know, a band got to play a show and an audience got to watch a show. And particularly if the band was famous, I didn't say who the band was, but if that band were really famous, then you're kind of getting a really one-on-one personal event. But the likelihood is that this famous act are not going to be doing those sorts of shows. And I just don't see how that experience is going to be a really positive one that you're going to go home and go, I really want to do that again. Because you're playing this wonderful venue, you sing your song and your heart out, and then you stop, and then there's this like kind of like, yay! You know what I mean?
It's like any open mic night ever.
It's going to be so weird. So, I mean, that's great, but I am just concerned. I am concerned, and we'll keep reading what I can and figuring out, you know, what we think we can do.
We'll keep an eye on it, yeah. Week on week, we'll do updates on this.
Yeah.
Right, time for our guest.
Excellent.
This week, the last few weeks we've been talking to music venue owners and promoters rather than musicians. That's not really by choice. It's just the fact that musicians don't really have anything to plug or talk about at the moment. So we will have some musicians on soon, and maybe even some people from different studios and all different areas of the music industry. But yeah, tonight we're heading over to Swindon he's currently at the Tuppenny, but Ed's had quite a bit of history around the Swindon music scene, hasn't he?
Ed is a long-term friend of myself and of Sheer, and is a promoter, grassroots promoter in Swindon. And Ed now works for a brewery, and we invited him on the show today, or the podcast today, to basically talk about how how his work has adapted themselves to lockdown, and the venue that he works and does a lot of work with, the Tuppenny in Swindon, how they've adapted themselves to the lockdown. And I think it's a really positive story that's come out of all of this. Take it away, Ed. Tell us about it.
Okay, well, obviously my entire life is tied up in the hospitality industry. So I have a day job working for West Berkshire Brewery, working in sales with them. And then I'm also a co-owner of a bar called the Tuppenny in Swindon, which we've sort of turned into or created a small music venue within. It's very, very small. We only do acoustic and things in there.
Small, so of course, but perfect. You've done it really well there, haven't you? It's not shoehorning in something into a pre-existing sort of space. You've kind of taken that space and said, we're going to put music, you put it in, you've done it well, haven't you?
Yeah, it's always part of the plan. Yeah, I mean, of the four of us who co-own the business, one used to manage the Victoria and 12 Bar in Swindon. One is a former gigging musician and a former pro session musician. And there's me, who's been promoting music for donkey's years. So, music was always going to be a part of that business. So it was always in our minds from the word go. So, yeah. And the business itself, the building itself has kind of ordained what music we would have. That's what we, like you say, we haven't shoehorned it in. We haven't turned it into a venue that it isn't suited to being. So it's a very particular building. We've got flats right above us. We don't own upstairs. We're not big. We've got low ceilings. So, a great big cavernous rock band would probably destroy people's hearing quite quickly. you seriously wouldn't get to the end of the first song if you had some of the bands that I put on at other venues playing. So yeah, so we focus on the rootsy end of things and the acoustic end of things. It works a treat.
And I think it does work a treat. It's absolutely fantastic there, and it really suits your history as well. What the sort of things that you've done in the past. It seems like such a natural, honest progression. It's like it's just done so well. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I mean it's taken on a life of its own. We only do original stuff. Me and you are cut from the same cloth, Kieran. Yeah. We don't promote covers acts. But yeah, over the years, as I've sort of got older, I've moved more and more into sort of the folk and the Americana and listening to that stuff and getting into those bands anyway. But one of the other things that we've also started doing is encouraging the local band population to actually reinterpret what they do. So take a big, loud, 5-piece indie band and challenge them to recreate their sounds and their set to suit our venue and our music night and our music audience. And so we've had some of our most favourite nights have been bands who've actually, you know, put down all of the big amps and everything, and have picked up the acoustic instruments, or even be much more creative and sort of switch things up and you know, use samples and use other things that we're much more in control of. You know, the thing that we have the problem with are big drum kits. I mean, but we've even had people like Will and Weasel playing with a drum kit because Will's a very controlled drummer and he plays a small kit, and you know, we can go away with things like that. But you know, as you alluded to at the beginning, with COVID-19 and things, everything changed for both of the businesses that I'm involved with. And come March the 20th, the door was shut on us. You know, we had no choice. We had to shut the business up. Both businesses, in theory, completely. You know, the sales at the brewery hit a brick wall and fell off a cliff because all of the pubs were shut immediately. You know, so yeah.
Actually, let me ask you a quick question about that, actually, because I did see about, I don't know, a week after lockdown that a lot of the pubs had to throw away, obviously, a lot of their liquid. They literally just poured it down drain. Is that what happened to the Tuppenny? Or were you able to sort of...
No, it wasn't, because, I mean, a lot of places do, because a lot of pubs will serve cask beer. And once you've opened that cask and you've tapped it and you started drawing beer off it, air gets drawn in, and that starts to basically kill the beer off, starts it degrading. So you've only got sort of between 3 and 5 days with a lot of beers before it's spoiling and you've got to get rid of it. So 5 days after doors shut, nobody's touched that beer, you can't do anything with it. Keg beer is different because that's a sealed environment, it's under pressure. Right. But with the Tuppenny, what we did is we certainly firmly believe in flexibility and working quickly and things. We decided very, very quickly to switch models to like a home delivery model and with online purchasing. So we built an online shop in 2 days, which was knackering. Uploaded all of our products, worked out how we were going to dispense our draft beers into containers that people can take home, as well as, I mean, we're lucky in the sense that our product range is very particular. We don't have anything mainstream. So none of the beers that we have ever stocked, you can go down Tesco's and buy, at 5 for 50p. So people who drink in our bar and drink our products that we supply can't go and get them elsewhere. So, you know, or they can, but it's few and far between. So we were able to keep on selling beers. We worked out how we were going to dispense the cask beers that we already had in the building and the keg beers. So we've continued to buy draft product, which hardly anybody has been doing. And it is partly thanks to the relationship or the fact that I have this other job at the brewery. I was able to beg, steal and borrow bits of packaging and stuff to try and work it out and see what works, what people would buy, what people wouldn't, and sort of progress from there.
You're actually sitting on quite a really valuable set of information there, really, because what you've effectively done is you've come up against this, you've got no other choice but dealing with this situation, and you've found a solution through it. Do you know anybody doing this?
We did it remarkable as well, but we've always had an online presence. As a beer manufacturer, you have a fan base almost. It's like being in a band to a certain extent. You know, people that they move away from the local area, but they still want the beer that they grew up drinking or whatever. So we've always had an online retail presence there. So it wasn't a new thing for the brewery. Although, to be fair, the sales went through the roof with the online stuff at the brewery, and I bet. I think they were at 181% of December through April and May so far. So every day we are tracking that much ahead of our busiest retail month of the year.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's been that bonkers, and it's kept the business going. So I don't think many places have done it. There's a couple of our sort of near and dear neighbours have done their version of it. So the Hop over the road have done a little bit of that. The local Swindon brewery, Hop Kettle, they've been doing that. But other places, because they haven't had this sort of niche market, they can't. There's no point selling products that you can get for a fraction of the price with your supermarket delivery. So a few of our sort of other bars and venues around us have done food and things like that. But no, I mean we're kind of out on our own almost in terms of around our area doing it. But then I've seen other people. There's one in Chippenham. There's a micro pub in Chippenham, Prince of Wales. I've seen them doing it.
Okay.
There's a new one that's just set up in Calne that's to do with the guys from Stealth Brewery down in Melksham.
Is that Malcolm Ship?
Yes, yeah, I think it's something to do with Malcolm. Yeah. So, so there are other people elsewhere doing it within their little local areas. But again, the thing that connects all of those is that they tend to work with the independent breweries, not the big mainstream brands, which is why that they can actually create this market for what they can offer. So yeah, it's keeping the bar above water. We qualified for one of the grants based on our rateable value. That came through very quickly. Full credit to the council for processing that. And between that and what we're turning over, which is only 25% of what we'd normally do, if that,
of course.
and the fact that we furloughed the few staff that we had, it's meant that we've managed to keep the business afloat and going, and the bills being paid and the rent being paid and things. It's been invaluable.
After all this is over, do you still foresee yourself continuing with the sales that you have been doing?
We've already discussed that we'll continue with an element of the online, because not everybody can come out to the pub every weekend, but they may want to drink some of those beers or the cocktails that we do. And
obviously you'll return with the live music when you can too.
Oh God, I can't wait. Yeah, absolutely can't wait. Although I've just confirmed our first Tuppenny virtual gig. So we had Chris Webb booked in next month, but obviously that's not likely to happen. So he's going to jump onto our Facebook platform and do his gig from. I think he's playing from his conservatory mostly at the moment.
Oh, right, nice.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, I've just been keeping a record of all of the great gigs that I've had to trash off, which has been heartbreaking. Yeah,
I bet it's been heartbreaking for me too.
Same for all of us. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all in the same boat. Cool. So Ed, earlier on I said to you, pick a song by a local band. Who have you picked and why?
Well, I could have picked any one of 20 or 30 bands. There's some fantastic stuff that is coming out locally at the moment.
There is.
And in the recent past. But I went with a band called Stay Lunar. They're great kids, fairly young band, come through over the last couple of years. They've played a few gigs for me as a full band. They're very kind of dream pop. There's sort of Cure influences and things, sort of synth, a lot of sort of reverby, jangly guitars and stuff, emotive lyrics and things. But they've also a couple of times now done some stripped back stuff for me, which I really like. When they do that, you get a much better sort of idea of the songs, the lyrics. For a band who are still in their sort of late teens, early 20s, to actually have the presence to be able to actually reinterpret what they do, strip it back down, change up some of the instrumentation and the arrangements and stuff is great. And they just write some really, really good pop records.
There's quite a lot of bands actually in Swindon doing that at the moment. I say Swindon's actually got a really strong kind of indie scene, hasn't it?
Very much so, yeah. There's a whole group that have come through in the last sort of you've seen them come through in the last 2 or 3 years, work their way through. They've got friendly with the venues and the promoters. They've got themselves booked onto their support gigs. They're now doing their own headline gigs. They're getting support for touring bands. And yeah, a lot of them, like Stay Lunar, like Getters, people like that, they're doing little tours all over the country. They're getting out to Scotland and up north and out to London and down south and to the southwest. And this has always been one of the problems with local bands, as I'm sure you'll see. There's these fab bands that pick up, but they haven't got the drive and the get up and go to actually expand their audience base. And these guys and their sort of peers have all done that, which has been fabulous.
that was a track by Stay Lunar, and that track was called Catch Up, a new young band coming out of Swindon. Excellent news. Plenty of them.
Swindon has got a really strong indie scene, yes. And hopefully we'll be seeing Stay Lunar down in Trowbridge Way. And once all this indie network and the Village Pump and Tuppenny, and we all start talking and it all works, it's going to be a brave new world, and I'm dead excited about it.
And if there are any bands out there who want to get their videos featured, or you've got any streaming things coming up or anything that just want to get in touch, the email address is sheerisolation@gmail.com. So drop us a line. So thank you to everyone who's supporting, whether you're viewing us or listening to us or however you're absorbing the Sheer Isolation podcast. It is very, very much appreciated. Events coming up this week, Kieran. I think you've got something to talk about.
Yeah, well, it's not coming up this week, but it's one that I've confirmed this week. It's 90s indie prog legends, Ultrasounds, and we've just agreed to have them perform at Moles Club in Bath in April 2021. So it's literally it's literally a year away. That's how far ahead people are planning now. So if you're into your 90s indie and mod sort of crossover prog glam rock, I've done a fantastic press release. Have I sent it to you, John?
No, you haven't. No.
I'm going to send you my press release because it's brilliant. If anybody wants a copy of the press release, I'll send it to you. It's really, I had a lot of fun writing it because I had a lot of fun. I really liked Ultrasound. So it was one of those bands I was able to sort of really, I get it. And I was able to sort of find some fun stuff to say. So Ultrasound playing Moles Friday the 2nd of April. And tickets are £15, and it's a 21-year anniversary tour of their debut album, which is called Everything Picture.
I suppose we're going to see a lot of this because people like promoters like yourself and festival organisers have given up on this year, so they're already booking. And you can't just pick up what you've done this year and carry it over because it's people are busy, people are on holiday, people have other plans. So it's
as we spoke to Frank Turner a couple of weeks ago, I think what will happen is people like Frank, who are of that way inclined, of reasonable status, will perhaps do some last-minute fill-in shows if they're allowed to. But I don't think there's anything serious being planned for this year. It is all happening next year. So I think all the gigs, all your local venues, if they get to reopen, are going to predominantly going to be local-style shows, and these sorts of artists that are willing to do, play undersells, and play small venues. So we'll see.
Indeed. But you're going to spend the rest of the week still doing decorating over at the Nield, I guess?
I am. I'm going to be doing more painting. It's going to be so beautiful when you come back. I can't wait to show you all.
Excellent. Meanwhile, I've got another week of work, 4-day week, bank holiday weekend. I get an extra day to not sit in my office. I can sit in a different room of my house. Woohoo! Woohoo! Oh, Kieran, it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Always a pleasure. I really enjoyed it today.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good, mate. All right, and we'll be back next week. So thanks for listening, everybody. Until then, enjoy.
Cheers. Thanks, John. Take care. Bye.
All right.